Are you excited to play FC26, but then you realize your game looks like this? Don't worry, in this video I will show you the best camera settings and visual options so you get the most relevant information on your screen, an overview over the whole pitch, or a completely spaced out high contrast mode in case you want to go for that. Let's start with the camera settings, but first of all a quick thanks to EA and also the Creator Network for making this video possible early on, because they provided us with early access of FC26, so thanks for that. So camera settings, we have three options that we would recommend to play with. The first one is tele broadcast, that's a classic. And then as an alternative, if you rather like to play zoomed out and have more overview, is co-op. And very similar, but a little bit different, is the new Ultimate Team competitive camera, which is only available if you play an Ultimate Team. So I will just quickly compare these three options. So telebroadcast is something that we would recommend if you like to be a little bit closer to the action, so more zoomed in so you can follow the player's action more in detail, and you really like to focus on your positioning or on your dribbling, for example. If you like to have more overview, you would go for co-op. This is the typical camera that you would like to get to have the full overview over the pitch. And very similar is, as I already mentioned, the Ultimate Team competitive camera. This is something that is only available in Ultimate Team, and you enable this as the first option in the menu. And if you don't want to play with that camera, but instead you want to play with co-op or for example telebroadcast, you would need to disable that and then choose the setting down below. You can fine-tune this if you go down a little bit more, and then you have the camera customization, where you then go to custom and then you can really decide the height and the zoom. So first of all, you have to decide for the main option, either telebroadcast, co-op or the Ultimate Team competitive camera, and then you go down to the custom camera settings where you can fine-tune this. For example, what works for me quite well in the last couple of years is height 0 and zoom 10 for the co-op camera, for example. This is what I played with quite a lot, but now I will try first the Ultimate Team competitive camera. So this is for the settings. Obviously you would try to find the right setting depending on the mode. So in case you play rush or like clubs, you can then also have to choose this kind of camera setting for the corresponding mode as well. So now we come to the more general settings, and we're going to start with the match settings, but I think most of this is rather self-explanatory because you're going to decide the halftime length or the difficulty that you play on. But this affects only when you play against the CPU in specific modes. When you play online, this is then given from the mode that you're playing, so you cannot really change that in that case. But what I like to turn off is the watch full match intro, because I don't want to see that if I go into a quick match against the AI to maybe record something. I don't want to watch an intro, so I have this on never. In case you're in here for the atmosphere, you can go for opt-in or always, but I recommend never because I'm not interested in that. What I would like to turn on is quick substitutes, because this can be helpful that you don't have to necessarily pause to make a substitution, but you have the option in those cutscenes to make a quick substitution. And then we have the conditions that you want to play your matches. Once again, this is only affecting offline game modes. Online, this is standardized as well. So then we have the game type settings, and this is a new introduction in FC26. One of the big features, honestly, is the differentiation between competitive and authentic. Competitive is the game mode that we play when we play online, Ultimate Team, but also the divisions. There we have like a little bit of a faster gameplay, less RNG, so less random effects, and like a weaker CPU in terms of defending. And authentic, this is the mode for the career mode players or like pro career players, that you have this kind of offline game mode which feels more authentic, more realistic, a little bit more of randomness, a little bit slower. So this maybe is depending on what you would like to play. If you're an online player most of the time, you go for competitive. Once again, this is a setting which is automatically turned to the proper setting. When you play online, you're playing competitive. You don't have to choose it right here. You don't have a decision when it comes to that. But in case you play against your friends on the couch, then you can, or you should decide, are you playing on competitive or are you going to play on authentic? This might make a difference. Maybe someone is complaining that they're used to authentic, but I would recommend competitive because it allows a little bit of a faster, more fun gameplay, I would say. So I'm not going to go into the details with the settings here, but the main differentiation is the competitive and the authentic mode. Now we come to a really crucial section of this video, the visual settings, because we have plenty of things that can be displayed on the screen, but some of it might be rather distracting instead of being helpful or relevant for our game. So some of it is recommended to turn it off, and I'm going to guide you through. The first option is the connection monitoring, and this is on contextual by default, and it's going to show you the ping, but also special events like a ping spike or packet loss. So it's going to pop up if something like this is happening. If you have it on always on, then you see it all the time. So this is interesting if you want to monitor the ping, for example, and want to see if it's going to change or vary between or like in the game. And if you think, well, it's not really helpful for me to know if something like this is happening and it's distracting me and it's giving me a bad feeling, you can also turn it off if you want. But obviously this is only relevant if you're playing online. Then we have the input overlay, and this allows you to display your controller input on the screen in the top right. You have several options. Single just shows your local input that you do with the controller that you have in the hand. Side by side also shows the controller when it's registered on the server, so like your input when it comes to the server, but this is a very broad view and it's going to block a lot of the vision, so I usually don't put this on because it blocks too much vision on the screen. And to combine this, we have now a new option which is called diagnostics, which combines both of these views in one. And in general, we recommend to turn this on at least for single in case you want to analyze your own game. So for example, you have an instance, like a moment in the gameplay where you felt like, well, this is not what I did with the controller. I wanted to aim in a different direction. I wanted to play a different pass. I didn't want to shoot in a different corner, for example. Then you have this on single, you see at least your controller input, you clip the situation, and then you look at it afterwards, and then you can understand what was wrong. Maybe your timing was not the best, maybe you missed some precision. And also, we would like to do this for you, because we also offer like a gameplay analysis of your entire game. We help you with the input, but not only that, but also the understanding, like what do you do fundamentally wrong when you're playing the game. This is something that we would like to help you with. You can go to our coaching website where you can book your own personalized gameplay analysis, and I can tell you, based off decades of experience in coaching, this is one of the most efficient ways to get personal feedback on what you're doing wrong, and it helps, like we have the best progress reports on gameplay analysis because, as I said, you get the individual analysis on what you are doing wrong and what happens to you in the game, so we can look at this. So if you're interested in that, check out our coaching website, and you can also see some other nice services and offers that we have, for example, weekly coaching, but also getting access to our premium courses and content like structured courses, over 10 courses and over hundreds of lessons that we are going to release during the FC26 season. And at the beginning of the season now, you get this with a nice discount. So we would recommend to turn this on in case you decide for a gameplay analysis. Then we have the score clock. This is also recommended to have it on because you would like to see what minute you're playing. But the score clock drop down is something that I usually turn off, because this is something most often information which is going to just block something also on the pitch, when can be rather distracting and doesn't help me at all. There most of the time that's not a useful information which helps me, so I have this on off. Same for scrolling lineups. At the beginning of a match, you see the lineup scrolling down, you see just the name. It looks very, very authentic and realistic to a usual broadcast that you know from a normal football match, but it changes the view, it changes the radar, the size of the radar, so I would also recommend to have it off to reduce this kind of elements which just distract you and don't really give you anything helpful. The same, like we have plenty of those options. Go for hypermotion inside overlays. Sounds fancy, it is fancy, looks pretty good, but I would recommend to turn it off because once again, it's rather distracting maybe in some moments. It tries to get displayed in those moments when it's like not blocking anything, but still, if you play fast, sometimes it might be still on and the game is already running. Measurement system, you go for your personal choice, either imperial or metric. Do whatever you want. I go for metric because I'm from Germany. Tactical chalkboard. This is, you can already see it here in the preview, that as soon as you change the formation or like the tactic, it's going to show you the changes. But this is going to block the normal regular radar, and maybe you want to look in that moment also at the radar to look if you have an open passing option or something like that. So that's why I would turn this off, because otherwise you might be missing the regular radar information that might be helpful in some of the situations when you just play the game. Tactical suggestions notifications. I also turn those off because I don't want to get informed by the game that something is going wrong. This is, I would say, like if you just started playing the game and you're not as experienced, then this can be helpful because it's going to suggest you some tactics that might be, as I said, helpful for you in the moment of the current game state. But if you have your own set of tactics and your own idea what you want to change, I will turn this off because once again it's distracting and maybe blocking some part of the display. Then we have some nice new options for the HUD. So we're showing you some information about the player that you're playing with. Footness icon means like it's going to show you what is the dominant foot of your player, how strong is the weak foot. That's very helpful, that's new, and I would recommend to have this on. The same for the skill moves rating, so you can just quickly look in the bottom left or bottom right to see how many skill stars does your player have, and you just get this back into your memory in case you're not aware of that. Then we have the Playstyle Plus icons as well, so you can also turn this on and off. I would recommend to have it on because why not? It's not really distracting, but it provides you some information in case you're not so familiar with your players yet. In case you're playing Ultimate Team, you can turn on the Ultimate Team objective gameplay notifications. So in case you fulfill some objectives in Ultimate Team, you can follow this as well. I think this is really helpful. And then we come to the indicators. So I go down and you see there are plenty of options. So let's start with the player name bar. And here, what I would recommend is not only go for enabled, but go for enabled and overhead, because this also gives you the option to display the name above the player, as you can see. And this is very helpful because for once you have this kind of detailed information in the bottom left or bottom right with the player name and the skill moves, weak and dominant foot, play styles. But then with the overhead player info, you can just follow the central player that you have selected and you immediately see the name, and you perhaps know that Bellingham is a right-footed player, and you know the strengths and weaknesses of this player, and you don't need to, for example, look at the skill moves or like the dominant foot. So I like to have this turned on because it helps me immediately to understand who's the player that I'm controlling, what is the player good at, where does the player lack perhaps, and then I can like get the best out of the player right away without me needing to check the detailed information in the HUD, for example. So then we have some rather niche settings which are not important, like the indicator size. You can change this as much as you want. Play indicator fade I would turn on because then you see if the player that you're controlling has less stamina. On the other side, in FC26, the player that you're controlling is not affected from stamina drain, so maybe there's a case to turn this off as well because it's not relevant. But this is a very classic old school setting and I have it on because of that. Teammate contain indicator, I would have this on because then you see when you activate the second player contain that which player gets activated and how much there is left. Then we have the playstyles overhead indicators. I would have this also on, but this is also personal preference. It shows you when a playstyle gets activated, and this gives me a better feeling that, yeah, there was a positive effect of the playstyle, like an intercept, like a quick step, or like a finesse shot, like an incisive pass. So many playstyles which I like to see in action, and it gives me the feeling, yes, something positive happened. But there are two factors to consider. First of all, this here you also see the playstyle pluses from the opponent, so this might be distracting, maybe gives you a bad feeling that something good happened for the opponent. And also, like in the past 2 years, we had problems that this had the potential to cause lags. So just like the screen, like the footage, the game was lagging a bit. And therefore a lot of players, or like some people recommend to turn this off. If you notice something like this, in the moment when the playstyle plus pops up above the player, turn this off. We have to get more experience as this is still an issue in FC26. If that is the case, this would need to be turned off. I like to have it on. So then next player switch indicator means that you see which player you will get selected to. Some people find this distracting or like too much information. I need this kind of information. If you want to make a really good choice what player switch will happen next, you want to see which player has the next indicator above. So I would have to have this on. Player-based difficulty indicator doesn't really matter. And then the player indicator, online indicator, is not important. As soon as we have here the player name enabled, we don't see the opponent's online ID, so that's why it doesn't really matter. Now we come also to a crucial setting. In case you get triggered and tilted from the opponent's celebration, you can turn that off in a way that you only see your controlled team, so you don't see the gritty or any other toxic celebration from the opponent, because it will just transition to your own players. They might be disappointed about conceding a goal, but you don't see the opponent's celebration. Hold to skip, I have on off. Why would waste time with holding something where you just want to just skip anyway? So I have this on off. Now we have some important visual settings when it comes to position settings. So for example, precision passes and precision shootings. If you watched the video on our controller settings, if you didn't watch it yet, like I'm going to recommend it here, click on the top right if you want to get some recommendations about controller settings. But we recommend to learn precision shooting this year. And in that case, you also want to have this setting on, because then you see this kind of fine line as soon as you go for a shot, and it reminds you that you're on precision shooting and where you're aiming right now. So this is always a good like a feature to remember you that you have to aim properly. For the precision passes, if you use the precision passes, so these are the passes with R1 and triangle, or R1 and square, or like RB and Y, or RB and X, then I would also recommend to have this on, because then you know how, like in what direction you're passing. Underfoot player highlight, I have this on disabled. I don't want that. One of the features which is rather distracting. Communication system, like you can communicate in like social game modes such as Rush or Clubs. I like to do this, and therefore I have it on. Same for the ping system. This is something, by the way, which I recommended when I was in Vancouver like 1.5 years ago, and said like this would be great to have for Rush. So please have it on, because then they see people like to use it. And then the AR coach in Rush, this I would only recommend to have it on show in case you need some suggestions how to position yourself, for example. So, but I have it on hide. The radar, also personal choice if you like to have it on 2D or 3D, but I would like either go for these two, either 3D or 2D. 3D can help to get like a little bit better understanding about the correct position. I'm also, once again, old school player. I like to go for 2D, helps me, like gives me all the information I need. The radar colors, you can pick your own color, so you always have, for example, white and blue or something like this, as you can see here. Or it's dependent on the jersey color, or like the jersey color in that case. The thing is, sometimes it's bugged at the beginning that the game makes some error, like all of a sudden you have 2 white kids or something on the radar. So if that is happening at the beginning, you just choose your colors, but it can also be a little bit confusing if, for example, you're playing in a blue jersey and your opponent is playing in red, and then you have, for example, a red color for your own players and blue for the opponents, because then it's just mixed up. So you have to get really used to the colors, I would say, otherwise it can be problematic. So now net tension, or like goal net, is something that you can mess with if you like. I, for example, like the tight net tension, and then, for example, the rectangle shape, but I think it's not always coming on in every game, but this is what I like to go for. And then we come to the more advanced features when it comes to visual settings. Now it can get a little bit funky here, because we have some new options in FC26, which can help quite a lot if you want to really narrow down the view in terms of what can be distracting, or like just being able to focus on the match itself. Can be also a little bit weird how it looks, because you can turn off the player shadows and also the stadium shadows. And this is a feature which I would say is asked for years, but it can look very artificial. So in case you really get annoyed by shadows of the stadium, or like distracting shadows of the players, turn this off. and this would be really good for you. You get this very minimalistic view of the game, but we can make it even further. We will come to that in just a bit. Then camera shake visuals. I think this is something that, like, if you score a goal, the stadium is going up and down, the camera of the stadium. If this is distracting for you, just turn it off. So like, I would probably play it like this, but just to explain what's happening here. And then the POV scenes, like for example, following the referee in those situations, you can also turn it off. Color blindness, you should know about it. I should not be able, like, shouldn't be the one tell you if you have some sort of a color blindness or preference here. And now we come to what I already hinted here, is the high contrast mode, because we can really change the complete view or looks of the game with this kind of mode, high contrast mode, because we can just set certain colors for our players in terms of either jersey, but also the complete body. As you can see, like here it's only the cloth, now it's the full body. So we can determine the colors of our own player, of the goalkeeper, of the opponent's players, etc. And this can help us, for example, to really differentiate, as you can see, if we go for here certain colors, that we can really make everything really easy to understand right from the get-go, because won't be affected from kit clashes, for example. Oh, both teams are playing in white jerseys, but also it can help to make everything like on the pitch really easy to differentiate from each other. So obviously this is really helpful if you are like affected from a little bit of a like not having the best eyes or like some sort of limitation here. So this is really big for those kind of players who have problems with that, because it can help you to make everything easier to access or like easier to understand for your eye. But I can also see a development where some pro players start using this, because it helps you maybe to really make every information on the pitch easy to understand in terms of visuals. So something to consider. I will try it out at some point and we'll see if this helps me out. And in case you see something weird happening like this, if you watch a stream from a pro player, that's the mode where you can set it up in the way how you want it. And as I said, like if you are facing a kit clash in a match, you can turn it on quickly here as well. So then we have some settings about subtitles. In case, like, I don't need to tell you about subtitles. Here you have the options for it in case you want that. Audio, same. If you want music, if you want commentary, this is the menu to turn it on and off. Also the language, for example. Rules, in case you play offline, you set it here. If you have handball or offside, in case you play online, doesn't matter anyways. Here, accessibility, you have once again these options when it comes to shadow or the high contrast mode, subtitles, etc. And I think these are the most important aspects. At last, briefly talk about the graphics mode. Every year we have this kind of moment when we say like, oh, we have to change this or a setting in the PlayStation or on the console to reduce input lag. I think it's more of a placebo, but there are people who say like with favor resolution, you increase the chance of not being affected from input delay, and then also maybe change something in the settings of the PlayStation. But I think once again, it's more of a placebo. So, these were all the settings in FC26 that I would recommend, which are important. I tried to do with my visual settings, as you can see, like really narrowed down to the most important ones, but these should be displayed in a very easy, like a simple way. And this is the approach to it. Obviously, if you fancy a more authentic or like authentic display or presentation, you turn all of this on, because then it gives you a really authentic feeling. But for me, I try to make it really narrowed down to the most relevant information. And in that case, I turn off quite a lot to make it easier to understand. So if this was helpful for you, then leave a thumbs up and also follow our channel. If you're interested about the controller settings, I already mentioned it. We already have a video about the controller settings as well. It's also recommended here in the videos. And once again, if you're interested in learning the game as fast as possible, check out all our offers. Check out the season pass for FC26 with our premium content on the Guide Plus, but also our coaching offers, and in particular the gameplay analysis, which I mentioned before. That's it. Thanks for your attention. Keep a clean sheet. I'm out.